So I'm trying another car session for you. I was worrying about the settings, so I haven't even tuned yet, but I wanted to say hey. Hope everybody's doing okay. All right, so if you have any questions, just let me know. And otherwise, I'll just play some stuff for you. I might roll down the window slightly to get a little bit of air going in here. But just let me know if there's something that you guys want to hear or if there are questions that you want answered. All right, hey guys, once again, live from the car. As you can see, I have the bicycle in the back seat. I was trying to get a little ride in, and then just trying to figure out the YouTube settings because they keep changing the live on me. So if you have any questions about anything, just let me know. And otherwise, I'll just play some tunes for you and maybe answer some questions about some things. Okay. Well, it's kind of a tradition here. I just usually play the song Green Tea that I wrote on the upright bass, but it sounds good on the electric bass and on the U bass as well. So here we go. Try that one more time. Right. Well, we got a couple people on board. Hey, how are you guys doing? Just let me know in the chat who's watching and if there's anything you'd like to hear or any questions that you have about the U-Bass. So just let me know, and hopefully the audio is going okay. For some reason, I found that the live streams work better from the car than they do from my house. Some internet problem that I've really had the whole time I've been living there, which is kind of unfortunate. But it's kind of fun doing these little car sessions anyway, so it works out. As you can see, I have a bicycle in the back seat, so if my hair looks a little disheveled, that's, you know, helmet hair. But I've been trying to ride a little bit more. So that was Green Tea that I just played a minute ago. I kind of start each one of these with that. But basically, I'm just gonna go over like how I came up with that. I've done this before in a couple of live streams, but it's probably just good to kind of go over again. So it's a combination of three kinds of things, right? So I have a bass line going on up here. Then I have a melody that comes in a little bit later. And then it goes this part. So that's the melody, right? And then the other part is just putting a backbeats on 2 and 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes the backbeat has to happen with the notes. When I do that, I have to like slap through a string to get the note to come out with that. But I think I saw someone on the chat, but for whatever reason, the chat just kind of disappears after it comes. Oh, there it is. Hey, Mike, how's it going? How long have you owned a U-bass? And do you play electric bass as well? Hey, Andreas. And Omnivorous Lawn Clippings. Very cool. You play bass guitar. And then you say, what strings are you using? These are just the round wound strings. They were the silver-plated ones. I don't know if they still make the silver-plated ones or if they do some other coating. But these are the silver-plated round wound strings. And these are actually... Whew, how old is this U-bass now? 5 years old. So the strings are actually the original strings. So if you see them on different videos, I play them regularly. You can tell that the coating is wearing off at every single fret. And now even past the fret, this one almost looks like it's just turning kind of a darker, it almost looks like copper or something. I mean, it's not copper, but it almost looks like copper underneath all the way up. So the coating of silver is off on the G string all the way and on the D string at every fret, except for maybe this fret. And then the E and the A strings still look good. But yes, these are the silver-plated round wounds that Kala makes. I just recently got it, but I do not know how to play it. Well, that's good. You've come to a good channel for that. I actually have a course on how to play it that's free on YouTube. There's a printable version of the course that's not quite free. You become a Patreon member, and then it's on there. So, you know, that's $5 a month, but you could become a patron for 1 month and just download it, you know, that kind of thing. And you get access to all the tabs and sheet music for all the other lessons that I've done, basically almost all of them. If there's one missing or something, you can let me know, and maybe I can make a video for it or something. But yeah, so playing the U-bass is a lot like playing the electric bass, especially if you have the round wound strings. If you have the polyurethane strings, the ones that look more like giant rubber bands, they're a little bit more, they take a little bit of getting used to if you come from the electric bass world. If not, just get used to them right away, you know, just by playing them. But you don't play as hard on those. You pluck very lightly, and sometimes your fingers might stick to the strings a little bit. So that's why I think just playing lightly is the secret. You play very lightly and you let the amp do the work. But if you're an electric bass player, you're used to digging in a little bit more, so you may want the metal strings, either the round wound strings or the flat wound strings that I have on one of my other U-basses. So that's kind of the thing there. But yeah, back to how I came up with green tea. So I've got the bass line. The bass line is just a simple bossa nova pattern, roots and fifths, right? Root, fifth, fifth, root, root, fifth, fifth. And it goes all the way around a 12-bar blues box, basically. So that's the 4 chord. Oh, cool, Mike, you got the round ones as well? And then back to the first one. Then it goes to the 5 chord, root, fifth, root, and then the 4 chord, and then back to the 1 chord. And then I don't really have what's called a turnaround at the end. If you've played a blues before, sometimes it'll do something at the end like, but this one doesn't have a turnaround at the end. It just stays on the 1 chord for the rest of it. So basically I chose a very, very simple progression to do. And then I added the backbeat to that, and then came up with a melody that wasn't too hard to play. And I think the reason I was thinking about that key in particular and some other things like that was there was a version, well, in the fact that I did it as a blues too, there is a song called All Blues by Miles Davis, and it kind of starts on that same melody note. It's just the bass line's a little bit different. And I think there was a Brian Bromberg version of that where it's like, so I kind of got a little bit of a start from there, but then did my own thing with it and did it over. Instead of being in 3/4, I did a blues in 4/4 with the bossa nova pattern. So there they're counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3, and I'm counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But you can kind of see the similarities. So that's kind of what happened. Was I just got an idea based off of trying to learn something else, and then made up my own melody. But I tried to make it simple, kind of like All Blues is pretty simple. I feel like All Blues' melody is simpler than even what I came up with, which is kind of crazy. But that's what Miles was into at the time. He was trying to do like a very minimalist kind of thing. So yeah, so I decided to be like inspired by that and just do something kind of similar. Let me check these comments here. Cool, at the moment I only play electric, but in the music shop I work in, okay, you've put some of the spirals on for customers on the U-bass and the gold tones. Nice. Yeah, the gold tones are cool too. Yeah, the U-bass is a lot of fun. I play electric bass as well. I think a lot of people kind of came into it from that. So I started on electric bass. I also play upright bass, and Green Tea, that song I actually wrote on upright bass, which is why, you know, that kind of, I've got All Blues stuck in my head. But that kind of chord works really well on there too, and that's kind of why I'm playing it with the middle finger and the pinky. So this is the 3rd fret on the E string. All right. 3rd fret on the E string, and then the 4th fret on the G string. And I'm just plucking both those at the same time. So you can still do that on an upright bass too. And then the 5th of G is D, so I'm just using the open D string there. So without the backbeat, it would just be. Hope not. Hope they don't arrest me. Sorry, there's a funny comment in the chat for the people watching later. Okay, but yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, maybe it's cool jazz, and you're not supposed to play jazz anymore. I don't know. That's why they're after me. That's why you hear the sirens in the background. Sure, we'll go with that. But anyway, that was the idea behind that song. So I just kind of took 3 simple ideas and had to figure out how to play them all together. So the challenging parts of that were when a melody note fell on beat 2 or beat 4, I'd have this backbeat going on. So I'd have to like figure out how to slap through the string to have the melody note come out. All of the melody notes are on the G string, so that keeps that out of the way of the bass line. And then the bass line, because the melody goes all the way up to here, instead of going to the C on the 3rd fret of the A string, I'd go up to the C on the 8th fret of the E string, so that I could still do that chord shape. So if I had a 1 chord in G, that's a G major chord, I'm playing a G and a B note. And then when I go to the 4 chord, playing a C and then a really high up here E note. And then when I go to the D chord, I decided, well, I have an open D string, so then I can just play the F sharp note on here and the open D string, just pluck those 2 strings. And that works pretty well on upright bass and electric bass. So it's kind of nice. But you might find when you're playing this that the kind of slaps that I'm doing for the backbeat, which is just literally slapping the strings, not like a thumb slap kind of a thing, but just like more what you do on an upright bass, it feels more comfortable on an upright bass because your hand's kind of like this across the strings rather than your hand being down like that. So just something to think about a little bit, I guess. But yeah, so that's how I came up with that song, and that's really what I do with a lot of my arrangements. So like if someone becomes a Patreon member and they want me to do a song, sometimes if they're a beginner, they might request, you know, that I do the bass line, and then I'll maybe play a ukulele part and sing the melody and then play the bass line. But other times, if someone doesn't specify what they really want, what I'll do is if I feel inspired by it, by the song, if it has a simple enough melody, I'll do this kind of thing that I did with Green Tea with those songs. And sometimes it's a lot harder than Green Tea. Like recently I did a Come Together arrangement. So the bass line alone is already a little bit challenging with all the slides, but then when you try to do the melody with the bass line, I found that it was a little too much going on, so I just did like a bass droning quarter notes instead of going while going. So what was it? You know, that kind of thing for the verse. And so basically it's the same idea as Green Tea. I've got the melody here, right? And then I've got the bass line is just going to be, right? So if I didn't have the backbeat, it would just be, and then you add the backbeat to all that. So that's just another thing that I kind of worked on, and then it became a lot more challenging in the chorus. So I had to do something different for the, we'll see. What was it? Yes. Yeah, I can't remember exactly everything, but it was something like that. That's what it was. Right. So the hard part there was fitting in the backbeats. I didn't even get all of them just then, but there was a lot going on with that one, so that one was a lot harder to do. But a lot of people that watch my channel, they're not looking to do crazy solo arrangements, so sometimes I do a lot of beginner things too. So if you have any questions about just playing in general, especially as a beginner, just let me know what you're working on or what questions you have about the U-bass other than, you know, the one that was already asked about the string, this particular string type. But yeah, because there are a lot of technique things, you know, hand placement and all that stuff. Like I said, if you have the time, there is a course on my channel that you can go through if you're just curious about simple technique, how to hold the instrument. And, you know, U-bass is kind of, it's a new enough instrument to where I think a lot of people will tell you different things on how to hold them. So I just kind of like took things that work on other instruments and kind of combined them together. With the electric bass, you have somewhere to anchor your thumb, so a lot of people will anchor their thumb on top of a pickup. But with the acoustic electric bass or with these, you don't really have that. So I use kind of I literally let my thumb float when I'm playing the E string, and then I use what's actually called the floating thumb technique when I'm on the other strings sometimes, where my thumb kind of like rests on top of the string, but not on top of it, but kind of in front of it. And then that way I can anchor my thumb that way and play the other strings. And if you wanted to, you could even mute more by letting your thumb come down as you're playing so that your hand never has to stretch out more than that. It just has to be like this. But you might see that I don't play like that all the time. That's because I was kind of the school of putting your thumb on the pickup. So what I do is when I play the E string, my thumb just kind of like floats out in space. And then when I play any other string, my thumb's resting on the E string unless it's needed to mute, you know. So that's kind of a difference. If you play electric bass and you go to U-bass, you might just be trying to figure out where to anchor your thumb. So sometimes with the E string, I'm more just letting some part of my hand rest against the body. And then with the other strings, I can go back to my thumb. So that's kind of a different thing. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or requests, just let me know and I'll try to get to them as well. Okay, I'm not gonna play too much of that one because I think they don't really, at least several years ago, they were weird about the copyright stuff on that one, so I'm not gonna do that one. All right, so I guess I'm gonna try to play. I'm trying to think of another one. Problem sometimes is like I'll make these arrangements for the U bass. I'll transcribe, I'll write them out and everything, and then a month later or 2 months later, they're just out of my memory, so I don't even remember some of the ones I've come up with. So I kind of just like making things up with these concepts. And there's certain keys that kind of lend themselves to making arrangements or making songs a little bit easier. Since we're on an instrument that's tuned to E, A, D, G, the key of E is pretty good. The key of G is pretty good. And E major or E minor are really good. G major is usually a little bit easier to make things in. And A major is a good one too, because you can come down to the 7th fret here, and then you get a 3-note chord where you have an open A string, the A at the 7th fret on the D string, and then you have a C sharp note down here. And so that sounds really nice. So that's the open A string, 7th fret D string, 6th fret G string. Right? So you can do a whole lot of things there with little hammer-ons and pull-offs and just stuff like that. Hello, hello. Hi, Nicholas. Hi, Casper. All right. So I like doing that, and then you kind of can finger pick. So instead of the technique that I was just talking about before, you can use your thumb to play one of the strings, and then your pointer finger to play one of the strings, and your middle finger to play one of the other ones. So you're just using these 3 fingers, basically. Kind of assign them to a string. So it's kind of like finger picking on a guitar, if you've ever done that. And then what kind of helps is having knowledge of where the notes are for a particular key. So like, let's say you're playing in the key of A. The notes will be in the key of A are A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. So memorizing stuff like that, and then memorizing where those notes are on here, or memorizing patterns is another way to do it. So right here, I know that doing the 7th fret on one string and the 6th fret on other. So doing a fret on a thicker string and then going into the next thinner string over and doing 1 fret back from it. Those two together create what's called a third, and a major third at that. So if you were to play chords up a major scale, I know that one sounds good. And then if you know how to do a major scale on one string, this helps. If you don't know how to do a major scale on one string, then just kind of learning that there are 2 different patterns, and then being like, okay, where do I go to where the next one sounds good, right? So you could either just move this pattern around until you find the next one that sounds good, right? Or you can try this other one too that's more of a minor chord shape, which is like having, like let's just take the 9th fret on the D string and the 7th fret on the G string. So that's a minor third shape. So you notice it's like skipping over 1 fret, having the ring finger on the higher fret, and the other one lower. Oh, hi, Nicholas. All right, thank you, appreciate that. But it's like skipping a fret is kind of a cool thing there, right? So that's a minor third. So the notes here would be a B and a D. 9th fret on the D string and 7th fret on the G string. And then you can pick these and kind of slide them up. But in a major scale, knowing which ones are major and which ones are minor kind of helps. So I've got that going for me, is that I already know that. We could go over that, but I think it would take a little bit of time. So if you want to learn stuff like that, I'd recommend learning a major scale first, and maybe learning a major scale on 1 string might help. So if you learn that first, I think that would help a little bit. And then I also made a video on how to harmonize a major scale using tenths, which is a similar idea. It's just instead you're going to be on the E string and the G string only. Right? So you have all that, and so then you can make a little harmonized melody. And all I'm doing there is just plucking the E string and the G string back and forth. So this pointer finger is just hanging out. It's just the thumb and the middle finger. So I'm hoping you can hear both those notes loud enough to where it's working. I know we've got this drone note of a plane going by, but yeah, I love doing those. So those are called tenths. And basically it's the same idea as that third that I was telling you about before, only we're taking the lower note of them down an octave. So right here I have a G and a B, 5th fret on the D string and 4th fret on the G string. But I'm going to take this G down to there, which means I have to use different fingers to play it. But now it's the 3rd fret on the E string and 4th fret on the G string. I don't know why I said B string. We don't have one of those on this. So that's kind of a cool shape, and that's the major version of it. If you have a minor chord, you would just do the same fret for both of the strings. So like if I want to do A minor, I do the 5th fret on the E string and the 5th fret, same fret, see, on there. So you can kind of go. So then if you go up a major scale, you end up with major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, technically diminished, but we'll just do it as a minor, and then major at the end, which that one's the hardest one to play because it uses the highest fret. But that's kind of what I was doing to just kind of make something up. So the only problem there is just these strings have a lot of that noise. The flat wounds have less of that. So if you're not a fan of how noisy these strings can be, the least noisy strings are the flat wound strings. And it's because basically what round wound means is that you have a round core, but that's not why it's called that. And then you have a round string wrapped around it. So lots of round going on there in that sentence, but you know what I'm saying? So because the string wrapped around the core is round, it creates these ridges, right? And then a flat wound, ironically, you'd think that would be different, but a flat wound won't have as much of ridges because it's wrapped with the flat part going here, so those ridges aren't as big. So technically it still has ridges, but the way they overlap, they're almost smooth because it's flat, right? So instead of having a millimeter or something different, it's so much smaller that it doesn't really, it just feels smooth, basically. So you just get a lot less noise with those strings. And then the polyurethane strings, the reason you still get noise with those is because they're a little bit sticky just because of the material. So you'll still get noise on those as well. But that's one reason that I like the flat wound strings more than the round wounds. But the round wounds project louder when they're not plugged in, which is why I'm using this for this right now. And they sound more like electric, just the normal electric bass sound that a lot of people are used to. And they're brighter, which means harmonics are easier on them too. And these are harmonics. Like, I don't know that I'd be able to get those to sound as cleanly on the flat wounds. They'd sound muted on there. So if you don't know about harmonics, that's another technique. It's a little bit advanced. It won't really help you that much if you're playing in a band. So it's just one of those kind of like solo technique things. But on occasion it gets used in a band setting, just not super often. Okay, but basically what you do is over certain frets, and there's mathematics behind it. The easiest one to do it over is if you go to the 12th fret, and when I say go to the 12th fret, that doesn't mean like right here, you know how you're pushing down in the middle of 2 frets to like play the note? What I want you to do instead is let off the pressure and then move to literally the 12th fret. And the way you can tell that is just literally count the pieces of metal. That's the first one. This doesn't count, it's not made of metal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The reason we normally push down in between them is because we're shortening the part of the string that vibrates to the fret and then the bridge down on the other side, right? So since we're not needing to do that, we can just let up the pressure and then move right over the piece of metal, the 12th piece of metal. And then just lightly touch the string. You're not pushing down, you're just lightly touching it. So make sure you're not pushing down, just barely touch it, and then still pluck like normal. Okay, so that's the easiest harmonic to play, is over the 12th fret. The mathematics behind it is the 12th fret is exactly in the middle. So like if I hold this up, if I can just get it, well, I gotta hold it closer, not further. What am I doing? If I hold it to where the, let's see, to where the nut is on one side and the bridge is on the other, if I were to hold it completely level, which I'm probably not completely level, the 12th fret should be right in the middle of the screen. Well, it's not that, it's that I don't have it done right. There we go. The 12th fret should be right in the middle of the screen, right? Because it's right in the middle of the instrument. So we're literally just splitting the string in half, and there's a harmonic there. If we do the same thing, but we split it in fourths, there will be another harmonic. And that one will still sound low, but the other two will sound an octave higher. So if we do this again, and we split it, let me get this right. And we split it in fourths, this is the middle. So the fourth should be like, let's see, that's a third, I think, right? So we want this one, we want the 5th fret. Because I think that's a fourth the way through the screen, then that's a fourth, then there's another one over here, right? So if we're over at the 5th fret on the G string, we'll get another harmonic there that's an octave higher than this one, right? And then we should, by what I'm saying, be able to find one over here. Well, there it is. It took me forever to find it, but apparently that's a fourth away on the string. I just was having trouble finding it. So we got that one, this one, and the 5th fret. Okay? And then we have another one when we split the string into thirds. So it ends up being the 7th fret. I'll just kind of like tell you that. But if you look at it, if you look at the math, it really is, let's see if I can get this to where it's right on the end. The 7th fret is about a third of the way through the screen. Then there's another one somewhere around here, and then, so let's see. Let me just measure it out with my thumb and my pinky. Yep, right at the 7th fret, okay. Then there should be another one right here, and then that should be the same distance otherwise. Okay, maybe I was a little off. But that's where the harmonics are. So 7th fret, there should be one, and then somewhere around that distance from there, there should be another one. There it is right there. So that's kind of how you find the harmonics on the strings. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. But those are just cool things that you can do. Kind of fun. Does anyone have any questions? I don't think I've seen a chat in a while. No questions yet. Feel free to say any questions that you got. So things that are more useful in just typical bass playing, depending on the genre that you're doing, a lot of just like right hand stuff, right? Alternating fingers is really important. If you're a beginner, I'd suggest practicing just index, middle, and being able to switch strings without slowing down. So like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. And I have a version of this, you know, this kind of exercise in my course too, where you just start with that and then build up from there. And then left hand wise, you want to be able to use all 4 fingers. You don't want to leave your pinky out. You don't want to leave your ring finger out. So try using all 4 fingers. So you could either start on the 1st fret or you could start on the 5th fret. It doesn't really matter. But just play 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 4th fret, or just any 4 in a row like that. 5, 6, 7, 8 is fine. But you're going to play them in a row, right? So your pointer finger is going to get the first of the 4. Your middle finger is going to get the second one. Your ring finger is going to get the third one. And your pinky is going to get the 4th one. And then with our right hand, for now, don't worry about it. But eventually, you're going to add the alternating with that. And you're alternating only index and middle over here. No ring and pinky on this hand. Just everything on that hand. kind of the exercise. I go over that in more detail once again in that course. Okay, so I'm going over some things just because I think I have a few beginners watching, and hopefully they still are. And then if there's something that you want to hear or that you have questions about that's more advanced, just let me know, and I'll get to that too. I just figure I'm going to help the people that are watching, you know. So so that's kind of an idea. You just kind of go through that, and then learning scales is usually the next step after that, kind of, because the scales use that same idea of all 4 fingers assigned to just, you know, 4 frets in a row. So your pointer finger gets all of whatever the first one is, your middle finger gets all of the other ones, and then you skip over certain ones to make the scale. And the reason you want to learn that is because that becomes a movable pattern, so you can basically play any major scale if you learn it in one place. You just move it and just do the same finger pattern. And all of a sudden, it's like, just by learning that one major scale, you've really learned all the major scales. Not all the different ways of playing it, but one way to play all the different major scales. And then you just got to know what note you're starting on and know which one you're playing. 3rd fret on the E string is a G note, so I'm playing G major from here. 5th fret on the A string is a D note, so I'm playing a D major scale from there. 7th fret on the E string is a B note, so if I go up there, I'm just playing the B major scale. And then that way you don't have to know which notes are sharp in the scale and which notes are flat. You kind of can reverse engineer it if you memorize the notes, or you don't have to know it to play whatever song you're doing because you're learning pattern-based things. And then from there, you probably have enough knowledge and just the idea with patterns and everything to learn some blues songs. So I'd recommend kind of jumping in to, you know, country's probably easier because it's just roots and fifths. But then if you're using those patterns, you can jump into some blues stuff by learning just the pattern and learning where to move the pattern to, right? So you start here, do it twice, then you just move it up a string. Then you move it back down. Then you do half the pattern when you're on this chord, because you don't have enough time to do the whole pattern. Then you do half the pattern on this chord, and you do the whole pattern again. So then that's a real simple blues pattern you could learn. The 12-bar blues, you stay on one chord for 4 measures. Then you go up to what's called the 4 chord. It's the 4th chord in a scale. So it's like, once again, that scale comes into play, right? So if you want to know where those blues patterns move to, knowing a scale really helps. So you start on the first note of the scale and do your pattern there, right? And then you go to the 4th note of the scale and do the same finger pattern wherever that ends up. And then later on, you end up coming back to the first one. And then after that, you go to the 5th note of the scale. And that's where you start the pattern. So I'm going over a lot of stuff way too fast here, but the idea is just, these are why these particular things are important to learn. So if you're not latching onto all this, that's fine. Like I said, there's that course, it's free, that you can go through at a much slower pace, and it goes a lot more into detail. And then there's a video that I made separate of those called How to Learn Songs on the Spot. And it kind of goes over that stuff at sort of a medium pace, because it kind of assumes you already have the technique to play. It just gives you the idea of how to use scales to break down songs, or you know, to make up bass lines for songs as well. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. It's a lot to go through. I think there was also a time that I tried to, before I had the course out, it was taking me so long to make that and just get myself to do it. That's the hard part, just getting motivated enough to like make a giant course. I ended up doing one of these live streams and going through every single piece of it. And I called it like the ultimate beginner first lesson or something. And the quality on that video is awful because it was at my house where, once again, the internet's a little bit slow. But I covered everything that was basically turned into the course on that in about an hour. So it's a more condensed version of the course as well. So yeah, just just those kinds of things are resources for you if you want to do that. But a brief recap of that is, I think learning the techniques, right? So being able to alternate with this hand, being able to play in a grid pattern with this hand. So it's like 4 frets in a row on all the strings, and assigning one finger to fret. And then being able to create patterns out of that. So the first pattern you want to learn is a scale pattern, a major scale and maybe a minor scale too. And then after you learn those scales, then you have enough information there to kind of make certain blues patterns. So here's one that's common. So you do that 4 times there, and then you're going to move up to the 4 chord, which is the 4th note of the scale. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. So we're going to start our pattern there this time. Then we're going to go back to the first pattern. Then the next chord is going to be the 5 chord. So 1st note, 2nd note, 3rd note, 4th note, 5th note of the scale. So we're going to move our grid to where our pattern starts there. Just do it once there. Then we're going to move down to our 4 chord. And then we're going to go back to our 1 chord and do the pattern again. So anyway, that kind of ties up everything that we started talking about earlier. Because when I was talking about my song Green Tea, that one uses that 12 bar bass line idea with an even easier pattern. It's just going roots and fifths. So it's going root, fifth, fifth, root, root, fifth, fifth, and that's the pattern. So you do that 4 times. Root, fifth, fifth, root, root, fifth, fifth, root, root, fifth, fifth, root, root. And it's time to change. Root, fifth, fifth, root, root, fifth, fifth. Then back to the first chord. Root, fifth, fifth, root, root. Then we're gonna go to the 5 chord, which means the 5th note of the scale. So G, A, B, C, D. And then we do our pattern there. And then after doing one of the pattern there, we move down to our 4 chord again. G, A, B, C. That's our 4 chord where it starts. And then we move our pattern back to the 1 chord. So that's the result of it. If I lost you along the way, don't worry about it. I'm moving very, very quickly on there. But hopefully you can kind of start to see how learning these things aids you in being able to play a variety of different things. So that's one of the big things I try to teach people on this channel, because you can create bass lines and follow along on things just knowing stuff like that. And then that's the particular one for the blues. So if you're playing a lot of blues songs, that helps. The other idea, it's still what we were going over about knowing what number something is within the key. So like let's say this is our major scale, right? When I say the number, I mean the order that the notes appear in the major scale. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6, that's 7, and then that's 8, but it's really the same as 1. It's just an octave up. So if somebody tells you, like this, so this idea is like the Nashville number system. So guitar players play chords built off of those notes. We play patterns that start on those notes. So that's kind of the difference there. And sometimes we just play the single note. So if somebody says, hey man, this one's a, it starts on the 1, it goes to the 5, it goes to the 6, and then it goes to the 4. It's a really common chord progression. So we're like, okay, it goes from the 1, that's the first note of our scale. It goes to the 5 after that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the 5th note of the scale. Then it goes to the 6 after that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's our 6th note. And then it goes to the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our 4. 1, 5, 6, 4. So that's what they're saying, is the chords are going to be built off of that. And then you got to listen to what they're doing on the guitar for how long to stay on each one, right? So this is how jams work. If you go out to a jam and a guitar player knows how to kind of facilitate it, usually a singing guitar player will tell you how to follow them, basically. And they'll either use the number system or they'll tell you letters, right? So they might just tell you, you know, it's a G, go to D, go to C. But somebody that knows the number system will just give you numbers. They'll say, you know, it's the 6th chord. Okay, that's the 4 chord, that kind of thing. And they're using this idea from the scales, typically the major scale in particular. So they say 1, 5, 6, 4, and it's a country line. Well, you'll be playing a root fifth on each chord. So 1, 5, 6, 4, you're gonna play a root fifth. Let's say you stay on it twice as long. Then you go to the fifth. Then you go to the 6. And then the 4. So the root's the first note of the scale. Then the fifth is the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then the 6th. I don't think I need to go up it because you can tell it's the next note on the scale. And then 4th note. And then you're back to the first one. And so just learning the scale pattern and being able to skip around in it to know where your pattern starts. And then after that, having the ability to just kind of reposition your hand to play a pattern on a note within that scale. All that stuff works together and you can create bass lines. And then you just need to know what style line fits with what genre of music. So country line is roots and fifths. Sometimes the fifths go up, sometimes they go down. So how did I say root and fifth? What does that mean? It's like we were just talking about these 1, 5, 6, 4, and that's not the fifth of that key. No, but it's the fifth of the note that you're on. So okay, so let's say we're doing the 5 chord, right? So this is our 1 chord. So we go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we go, okay, well that's the 5. Well, I'm just gonna reposition my hand over here. And then the 5 of that scale basically is the 5th of that chord. So it's like Inception kind of, right? You've got your scale down here to find what chord you're going to be on. So G, okay, the 5th of G is D. So we're going to the G chord. Now what's the 5th of D? Oh, it's A, okay. D, E, F sharp, G, A. Anyway, it's an A. You got to memorize the notes to know this stuff. But you'll start to realize that, oh, okay, a 5th away, because this is all pattern based, is just, if I'm on a note, I go 1 string thinner and 2 frets up. So 1 string thinner plus 2 frets. So if I was on the 3rd fret, a 5th away from that would be the 5th fret on the next string over. So if I'm on the 5th fret, go to 1 thinner string and then add 2 frets, 5th to the 7th fret. That's a 5th away. Now, if you know that that's an A note, you might be like, ooh, we're getting into guitar territory. That's sounding a little high-pitched. Well, you could take, if you know that's an A note, just play a lower A note. So it could be the open A string. So that's an A, the octave down. That's the wording for that. So yeah, anyway, hopefully some of this will stick, basically. If you're a beginner and you haven't gone through all this stuff, it might be a very little bit that sticks. It might just be, okay, I'm going to start with the 1, 2, 3, 4 thing, and then eventually I'll be playing patterns with that I can move around that'll help me create bass lines or know what to play. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, right? I'm glad this is helpful. I have other videos that break it down that might make it a little bit, that might go in order a little bit better, or, you know, sometimes there's like a PDF that goes along with it. If you're a Patreon member, you can find them. Okay, so let's take a break from that for a second and answer some questions. We got a question. Daberga, sorry if I'm butchering your name, asks, what do you think about the Kala solid body ukulele that came out last year? So I've been meaning to do a review video on that. I live pretty close to Uke Republic, and they always have cool things in there, and they've had them in there for a long time. I went up there and played on one and did a short video on it, and I like it. So there are 2 brands that I know of. There are probably plenty of others, I mean, online brands, but there are 2 brands where they carry them at the shop that make those instruments. So the solid body bass, you know, I don't know if you'd call it a U-bass really, and there's a reason for that, and I'll get into that in a second. But it plays nicely. The thing that I liked about that one better than the other brand is Flight. And the Flight bass, it just starts sounding it gets this weird hollow metallic sound early on in the frets. So that's not a typical sound that I would want, you know, for bass. You might be able to EQ it out, but then you'd be losing all your highs and your mids just to get rid of these overtones that are happening there. The Kala didn't have that issue until, you know, really up high, like up here. And that didn't bug me at all because most of the time you're going to be down here. So to me, the Kala had a better tone overall of those, and I actually did like it a lot. And I know they're making a fretless one now. So they've made two things that I think are cool, and I may end up getting one. They made a blue one that I really like, because you can tell I like the color blue, the blue bike behind me, you know. But they have a really cool blue one that came out, and then they have a fretless one. What I want is a combination of those two. I would like a fretless blue one, and if I have money at the time when those come out, because I'm sure they'll probably make one, then I would like to do that. And then Mary Jane says, I have an Ohana UB22. I believe I've done a review on that one. It was either the 22. No, they had one of those at Uke Republic, and I did a review on that one as well. Those are all right. They're kind of like this, but a little bit longer. And my whole thing is, the thing that I like about these is kind of how compact they are. If they're any longer than this, it just makes sense for me to bring the electric bass. Or if I wanted something like that, maybe I'd just go ahead and get a full acoustic electric bass, because they'll project a little bit louder. But that's an advantage to that one. It projects a little bit louder than this one. So if you're jamming with a guitar player, you might be able to hear that one in the mix better than this. I know that when I was jamming back during the pandemic, we were trying to be 6 feet apart, and a friend of mine came over. We were 6 feet apart, and he couldn't hear this one over his guitar playing. So he was strumming chords and stuff, so it was a little bit louder, but he was having trouble hearing me. And to me, this one projects a lot, so that might be better. But yeah, that's what I mean, not plugged in. If you plug them in, obviously that solves the issue. But yeah, the one the size of yours can be heard a little bit better like that. And then as you get bigger, they can be heard better, which is why upright basses are so massive, right? Because if you have an upright bass and you're bowing it, you can hear that in an orchestra, you know, from like way across the room. Whereas the even the what is it, the OBU 22, what is it called? UB22, Ohana UB22. Even that one probably wouldn't be heard from that far away unless it's plugged in. So that's just the thing. The bigger the instrument, the more it projects, especially for bass frequencies. We need it. With the ukulele, it doesn't, you know, there's such high pitch frequencies that it really doesn't need much to project. But for bass to carry through the air, you need a much bigger instrument, and for it to carry through solids, the more space there is for the thing to vibrate and reverberate, and the tension being higher on the strings, you know, all that stuff kind of helps to make it louder. So it's amazing what they've done with the U-Bass, but it's not going to be loud on its own, which is kind of nice if you're trying to practice quietly or something. But other than that, it can be a little bit limiting without an amp. So yeah. Let's see, any other questions or any other things? Right. So yeah, so for me, I had an acoustic electric bass. I just decided to sell it because the U-Bass did everything that I needed it to do. You could argue that it sounded better in some context and was better for the projection, but I was not really doing anything in those contexts, so I found that this really replaced it for me. So I haven't missed it since I got rid of it. And there's a video that I made comparing the two, and I'm not sure if I cover that or not in that video. But yeah, this one's been just fine for me. And it's been loud enough. I think it's loud enough for jamming with the ukulele. It's just, if a guitar is strumming wildly, then it's not. Okay. So then you've got all this idea with the patterns and all these other things. then you can kind of add techniques to all that stuff, right? So you've got things like hammer-ons that are kind of cool. It's where you hit one note and then just push down with the other finger hard enough to be heard. And then you've got slides. So slides, basically you push down a fret and then you just slide up. It works better on metal strings than the polyurethane strings, because a lot of times if you make a really long slide, the polyurethane string will kind of like bunch up by the time you get to the final note, and then it'll be a little bit flat. So instead of going, it would sound like, you know, it'd be just a little bit below where you wanted it to be. So that's kind of one of the things that can be a little bit frustrating about the polyurethane strings. But if you slide really lightly, it won't bunch up as bad. And if you do short slides, it's still doable. It's just the really long ones will be a little bit out of tune by the time you get up to the high note. So, so that's just one thing. I almost feel like I'm playing little interludes, almost like, you know, if you watch Seinfeld or something, you know, like just in between frames. Every time I stop talking, I play something. Right, oops. But yeah, it's just kind of a habit. But sometimes it gives me an idea of what to talk to you guys about next. So like slides, hammer-ons, or the opposite of a hammer-on's a pull-off, where you play a note and then you pull off with that finger that just pushed down on the note. And when I do a pull-off, I kind of pluck just lightly as I'm pulling off. So it's not just like this and then pulling it outward. It's like I'm almost plucking slightly down so that the volume's a little bit louder on it. And you can also do the combination where you play a note, hammer on, and pull off. So the one thing that I notice when I hear a lot of other people play hammer-ons just as like beginner and intermediate players is they don't think about the hammer-on as being in time. But these notes do need to be in time if it's notated that way or if it's in the song that way. So like if you were playing like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and you could tell where those notes are. When you hammer on, try not to hammer on so quickly that the note ends up there early. You just gotta go 1. It's the hammer on and pull off. So see how I'm not going like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not rushing it just because it's a technique, right? I'm still trying to play them in time. So that's kind of the idea with that stuff. And sometimes people will do a little trill by doing a hammer on and a pull off quickly. So you hit the note and you just try to do it as quick as you can. So it's a different technique, but it's a combination of those techniques. Okay, and then you can do a lot of cool things with pull offs and hammer ons. You can play a note, pull off, and then hit the note again, and then do a whole scale on a string that way. That time I was hitting a note, pulling off, and then hitting 2 notes after. So note, pull off, pluck, pluck. And then just, you could do the shorter one where it's just pull off and pluck a single time. And then you could do a combination. So that's kind of fun, and it just makes it sound like you're doing a lot more than you are, but it does take a while to get the timing down of playing a note, pulling off in time, then plucking another note. Okay, so Mary Jane says, I get a lot of squeaking and buzzing on the still strings, okay, that the Ohana has. I know my technique is not very good. I'm still a newbie, but what can help with that? These strings are noisy, and when you plug them in, it really, I figured out that you meant steel after saying still. I'm like, okay, I got you. But yeah, the strings have these ridges, like I was talking about earlier. I'm not sure if you were here for that part. Some people switch over to flat wound strings. I had borrowed someone's, I I think it was the same model, the UB22 or the 23. It was one of those. And they had gotten specially made flat wound strings for theirs. And the flat wound strings don't have these ridges. So when you're going like side to side, there's a lot less noise just naturally that way. But these strings are just kind of noisy strings. So, you know, you have to kind of mute and move the hand, not while touching the strings, kind of helps. As they get older, they'll be less noisy, but there is just a lot of noise with these strings. But when you're playing with the band, a lot of times they have a lot of like things going on that almost cancel that stuff out. So you don't really have to worry about it a lot in an ensemble. A little bit, but not as much. And then, yeah, you just kind of have to learn how to minimize it as much as you can. But it's just one of the kind of unfortunate things about them. So, yeah, that is kind of an unfortunate part of these strings. But these strings are 5 years old, so they're a little bit more dead. So if you're like, man, he's not getting as much string noise as I do, how is he doing that? Part of it's just that there's a lot of like dead skin stuck in these strings from playing them so long, and they're worn a little bit, so maybe the ridges just aren't as like tall, you know. So unfortunately, they're still noisy, but a lot of that like hammering on might give you more. You might get a little more buzz like this. If you're getting a lot of that, there is something I can tell you that'll help a little bit with that kind of stuff, and that's when you're fretting a note, don't be far back in the fret, be closer up to the one you're actually shortening the string to. So basically, if you're playing the second fret, the second piece of metal is here, right? So instead of being closer to the first fret back here, you might get a buzz if you're back there. If you're closer to this one, you don't have to push down nearly as hard to get a smooth sound. But then when you let go, you will get a little bit of buzz there, which is a little annoying. So yeah, and that was the other thing when I was playing the UB22. I think in the I'm not sure if I said it in the review video, but those strings are very bright and they are noisy, you know. So there are just things about it, you know. They're very bright strings. There's an advantage to that if you want to do like harmonics and stuff. They'll ring out even better than these do. But you might get some of those overtones when you don't want them as well. So that is another side effect of it. So yeah, there's just a lot going on there. But I did like the bass. It's just the person that had the flat wound strings, and I did an REM song. It was a Patreon request for Shiny Happy People Holding Hands, I believe. That one I used the Ohana with the flat wound strings. The guy had like custom made strings that he got someone to make for that instrument, and they were a little bit too low down. I would have had the action a little bit higher, so they were buzzing a little bit for that reason, but not too bad. But that's one option, you know, is they probably make them that length now. You probably don't have to like I'm not sure. Check the scale length, but the flat wounds they're making for the solid body Kala, don't quote me on this in case I'm wrong about it, but either those or they might have another one that they've made for a different model. They might exist, and the flat wound strings would have they're not going to be as loud though. They're going to be a little bit quieter and sound a little bit more muted, but they'll have less string noise. So if you can find some flat wounds that fit your bass, so you need to know the scale length of your bass, and 22 might be the scale length, I don't know. And I think those Kala solid bodies are 23-inch scale, so that may be close enough to where it'll work. But once again, there may be a better option. There may be something that's particularly made for the Ohana as far as a flat wound string that size. But yeah, with these do project better. The only problem with that is they also project the noise that you're not wanting better too. So you might still be better off with the with the round wound strings. And just like I said, just be a little closer to the fret here so you don't have to push down as hard. When you're letting go of notes, they're going to buzz a little bit. One way around that is to mute it with this hand before letting up. And then it's less noise. It's not no noise, but it's less noise. So you can just kind of experiment with little muting techniques like that. But other than that, you can just wait for the strings to get a little bit older, and they'll be a little less bright the more you play on it. So, and you'll get used to it, and you'll figure out other muting techniques that might help enough to where it's not frustratingly noisy, you know. But that is a downside of them, and if you listen to my arrangements, you can hear that, especially in the ones where the strings were new. It's just one of those like side effects where it's like we just let it be, you know. It's gonna be in there, so just be okay with it, and that's kind of the trick. But I know it's not what you want to hear. Even the polyurethane strings, like through the amp, the type of pickup, the piezo pickup that we all have, that some variety of that, it picks things up really well. So you're gonna have, like, you know, string noise, and when your fingers stick to the strings, even on the flat wound strings, those pickups do pick up some noise. It's just nowhere near as much as the round wound strings make. So just something to get used to. But the cool thing about these strings is they have this bright tone that rings out. That's a really cool sound that you won't get from the other ones. And if you want less of that, you can always mute down here with your palm. It's called palm muting. Use like this part of the hand right up next to the saddle, just very lightly on there, and then you can play with your thumb. And you can get a more muted sound, whereas somebody playing on the polyurethane strings, the sound is already muted by the material the string's made out of. So you don't really have an option to get much brighter other than cranking the EQ, you know, the treble all the way up or something. So that's kind of the advantage to each string, you know. Flat wounds have the least noise, but they sound a tiny bit muted. The round wounds have the most open, bright, you know, thing, but then you might end up with all that. I don't know if this light's going to be enough since it's behind me. The sun's starting to go down, so that's why it's getting a little bit darker in the car. But yeah, and then the polyurethane strings are going to sound, they're going to have that cool sound, and you can sort of emulate it by palm muting and stuff on the other ones, but it's not exactly the same. So if you really want that U-bass sound, you know, that people compare to the upright bass a lot, then you really do want those polyurethane strings for that reason. And then the flat wounds to me are like the happy medium, so I end up playing on that one a lot. But this one, you know, being an electric bass player, these feel the most like an electric bass. So if you can just wait it out and let them get a little bit more muted over time, hopefully that'll help. So when I'm playing like a funky groove like that, you might notice that I'm muting over here. I'm flattening my fingers out, and just like the strings are not ringing out or anything, and I'm not pushing down. I'm just touching the strings lightly so that you have that percussive kind of sound. So I'll play a note, and then I'll do that in between. So that's kind of a technique that kind of works in funk a little bit, but sometimes it gets buried beneath the drums. But yeah, so I think that's basically it for today, no pun intended. But I hope you all have enjoyed this live stream and that you learned something new. And if not, there are plenty videos on the channel that hopefully y'all can go through. I think I have over 400 videos on there now. If you go way back, they're not all U-bass. Some of them are electric bass videos. But yeah, I think the hardest thing there is just sorting through them. So if you're a beginner, I'd recommend finding that course. So sometimes I've called it two different things. I called it the Ultimate UBase course in one place, and then that's one long video. And then the other one is like a playlist of the different parts, rather than putting them all back to back. And that one I think I called the Bass Ukulele Mini Course, but they're the same thing. And then the How to Learn Songs on the Spot is kind of like where to go from that video, from that course. So if you already know the stuff in the course, then that's kind of what I covered earlier, where you learn a scale, you apply different numbers to the scale that you've already learned. So you would have learned the scale in the course, and then I briefly go over it in the How to Learn Songs on the Spot video, like how to play a scale. But just knowing that it's a movable pattern, knowing that, knowing the first note of each one, of each scale, kind of helps you place where the pattern is. Just knowing those little things can help you break down a lot of bass lines and come up with your own bass lines too. And then after that, you can use the scales to make little walk-ups between the chords, right? So there are little things that you can use there that really do, a lot of them come from the scales. That one that I did added a note that's not in the scale, but most of that's in the scale. If you want, right, you can create fills in between the chords that you're going to, using notes basically from the scale of the key that you're really in. So like if you're in the key of G, use the notes of G even when you're on the D chord going to the G chord, right? And you might hear a lot of these in the like Walk the Line intro. Right, and then that one's in there, I think. Yeah, so that one I think is just basically those two walk downs just alternated. Right, and so then you have the country line in between, but those walk-ups all really are just going up the scale, going down the scale. Sometimes you're repeating the first note before going to the other ones, but yeah, knowing a scale makes a lot of that stuff more intuitive. So hopefully that helps a little bit, and I hope y'all enjoyed this one. I will see you guys. Basically, I do this once a month. Usually it's the first Thursday of the month. My car decided that it was time to turn the light off, I guess, on its own. But usually it's the first Thursday of the month. Sometimes I'm busy on that day and I'll move it to a different one. But yeah, I hope to see y'all at another live stream soon. And I hope you guys have a good week, month, just whenever I talk to you guys in the comments next or whatever. But take care. Have a good one. I'll see you guys later on. If I can figure out how to end this. All right. I can't figure out how to get out of it on the phone. This is interesting. Okay. Bye, guys.